to the K, to the K.
Coming at you quicker than an RKO out of nowhere, it's the Rapid Roundup. Bloodline kickoff SmackDown this week. Roman asked Jey why they called him the right-hand man. Main event Jey Uso, because he called him that. The only reason he became the right-hand man was because 3 years ago Jimmy was hurt, otherwise he'd have no chance. Now Jimmy's injured again and he wants a title match. Apparently he's selfish, according to Roman Reigns. If hypothetically Jey wins, he takes everything away from him, but he'll always be Roman Reigns. But Jey will always just be Jey Uso. Roman asks how Jey can think of beating him, and Jey says, well, because I already did, and he's the only one to do it, and at SummerSlam he's going to do it again. So interesting way to kick off the show this week. Next, we have a number one contenders match for the US title. Rey Mysterio, Santos Escobar, LWO Brethren. Midway through the match, Escobar hits a suicide dive, and it looks like Rey hits his head on the floor. After commercial break, we come back. The doctor's looking over Rey and decides he is unable to continue. And there we have it. Escobar is going to face Theory in 2 weeks' time. So no SummerSlam match planned for these two. But yeah, hopefully Rey's okay. It seemed to be a legit injury, so hopefully he's back soon. We follow on from this with Hit Row, and they're in the ring chapping absolute biscuits, as they always do. LA Knight comes out and says he didn't know Uncle Phil became a rapper, haha. He says B-Fab has a tingle in her loins and she's horny, apparently. And then he proceeds to defeat Ashante Adonis in pretty convincing fashion, to be fair. Later in the night, LA Knight interrupts Adam Pearce and says he's going to be a participant in the Slim Jim Battle Royal, because that's a thing, apparently, at SummerSlam. Sheamus also interrupts and he says he's going to be in it too. So Pearce puts both of them in and books them in a one-on-one match for next week. We also get Charlotte and Bianca teaming up against the tag team champions Sonya Deville and Chelsea Green, but can they coincide? It's a tale as old as time. Of course, they end up arguing. Charlotte tags herself in, and when Bianca has the match won, Charlotte comes and steals a pin. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. Not enough has been done to build this, in my opinion, ahead of SummerSlam. But they've still got one more chance at SmackDown, so we will see what goes on there. We follow up from this. Karrion Kross defeats Carl Anderson in a match that happened for some reason. Because he's feuding with AJ Styles. Of course he is. Kross decides to put Anderson in the sleeper after the match, and AJ comes down to make the save. Snooze all round, unfortunately. We then follow on from this. Backstage earlier in the night, Grayson Waller says Jey Uso could use the Grayson Waller rub after Roman beats him. Jey slaps the taste out of his mouth, and they end up facing each other one-on-one in the main event. Grayson, interestingly, using some maneuvers inspired by The Rock, including a attempt at a people's elbow. But yeah, rumor has it The Rock may show up at SummerSlam and have some kind of involvement with Waller. So yeah, I mean, if it happened, it's going to be a massive waste unless he somehow gets involved with the whole bloodline thing. But yeah, basically, Waller attempts the people's elbow, or a version of it, misses it, and Jey gets the win. After the match, however, Solo Sikoa attacks him. Jey manages to fend him off, but Roman tries to get involved, but Jey spears him. Solo does get back on top, and eventually Roman and Solo proceed to give Jey several spears and spikes to close out the show. Mosey on over to Monday Night Raw. Logan Paul kicking off the show, and Ricochet not far behind. He says he doesn't like Logan, but he respects the fact that he's a showman. Logan replays the spot from the Rumble because, of course, he has to, all for the viral reasons. Logan says he hopes there's no hard feelings when at SummerSlam he has his fiancée, Samantha Irvine, announcing him as the winner. That obviously makes Ricochet very angry, and they brawl for a bit, but Ricochet goes for a springboard but gets knocked out. So, interesting way to kick off the show on Raw this week. Next, we have Ludwig Kaiser battling Riddle. Gunther tells Kaiser that he's disappointed in him for losing to Drew last week. This week, however, Gunther shouting orders via ringside. Kaiser gets the win over Riddle, and he gets it clean as well. So I think management's clearly not best pleased with Riddle, so I don't think he's going to be getting a push anytime soon. Following on from this, Maxine Dupree makes her singles debut against Valhalla, and she's also being coached at ringside, and she pulls off the worst ever attempt at a worm, but she does finish the match very impressively with an Ocean Cyclone suplex for the win. And look, I've got to give Maxine some credit, didn't see this side of her coming, and long may it continue. Judgement Day do their spiel, bigging themselves up, talking about how they're getting rid of people who don't fall in line, people like Kevin Owens and Liv Morgan, but out comes Raquel Rodriguez and she starts to brawl with Rhea Ripley, but Ripley takes out her knee. Judgement Day laugh and walk off. Backstage, Adam Pearce tells Raquel that she will get a match against Rhea as soon as she's cleared to get back in the ring. We also had a video package for Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. I really want to be into this because there's some semblance of story there and they did a decent job of getting me invested, but I'm just still not a fan, unfortunately. But as I said last week, they needed to do something different with this and they're making it an MMA rules match. So yeah, let's see how it all unfolds. But yeah, still not massively invested, but it'll be more interesting than trying to see them just in a normal wrestling match, let's be fair. Lesnar comes out and he says he's a former NCAA champ, former UFC champ, and a former WWE champ. If there's one thing he knows about championships, is that this is fight week, and this Saturday he gets paid to kick Cody's ass. Meanwhile, Cody gets paid to get his ass kicked by Brock Lesnar. Brock invites Cody down to the ring to shake his hand, look him in the eye, and Cody obliges. He comes down, shakes his hand. Brock gets out the ring, but Cody decides to dive out on top of him, but Brock gets the upper hand, hits him with some steel steps, and then hits him with an F5 in the middle of the ring. So yeah, basically, if you didn't already know it, Cody's definitely winning at SummerSlam. That's what this means. Following on from this, Chad Gable gets a 5-minute challenge match with Gunther. Basically backstage, they have a bit of an altercation. Gable says Imperium are going to be banned from ringside and so will Alpha Academy. He wants to see if Gunther can get him beat one-on-one. With 15 seconds left, Gunther's got Gable in a sleeper, but he tries to lift him up for a powerbomb. Gable ends up knocking him over the ropes and he outlasts the 5-minute timer. Gunther is very upset by this and he decides he's going to get more time. The match is allowed to continue and Gunther ultimately gets the win. And after the match he says he's not losing the IC title at SummerSlam. He says what he did to Gable awaits Drew McIntyre, and he's going to end Drew once and for all. Becky Lynch calls out Trish and says that she's beat Zoe Stark, so now it's time to fight Trish. Trish says it is going to happen, but it'll be on her terms. But Adam Pearce has other things in mind. He says it's happening right now. But 5 seconds into the match, Zoe Stark interferes for the DQ. After the match, Adam Pearce makes Becky versus Trish at Raw in Winnipeg in 2 weeks' time. So no SummerSlam match for these two, which is very surprising to say the least. But hey ho. And Zoe Stark will be banned from that match as well. So yeah, I think Becky's going to win, but it is in Canada, so you never know. Also, Shinsuke Nakamura and Tommaso Ciampa had a pretty snooze fest of a match, with Nakamura getting the win by holding the tights. In terms of the main event, Seth Rollins teaming with Sami Zayn against Dirty Dom and Damian Priest. Rhea Ripley continues to be a nuisance throughout most of the match. At one point, after Priest hits a razor's edge on Rollins, he decides he's going to cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase. And just as he's trying to get Finn to pass him it, Finn sort of hesitates, and that time is enough to give Rollins a chance to recover. And then he hits a super kick into the briefcase on Priest. And I think Priest gets accidentally busted open by this as well. But Rollins hits the stomp for the win, and Judgement Day are left reeling. So a bit of a reverse on what happened last week. Taking a trip over to AEW with Dynamite, Orange Cassidy defending the international title against AR Fox. We get a nice little promo package before the match showing the friendship and history between Fox and Darby Allin. Apparently Darby owes him a lot. He put him up and says that he wouldn't be a wrestler without him. Solid match between Fox and Cassidy, but Orange Cassidy does retain. After the match, he gives AR Fox his shades, but Fox cheap shots him, and Darby comes down absolutely fuming. And then out of nowhere, a wild Jon Moxley appears and hits the Death Rider on Orange Cassidy. Following on from this, Jack Perry comes out with the FTW title that he recently won from Hook. He says it was created in a second-class company full of scumbags, and from that second-class company is a scumbag himself, we kid. Jerry Lynn, of all people, comes out to interrupt him. He defends ECW and says he's going to kick Jack Perry's ass. Perry says it'll be on his terms and it's going to be next week. But as it stands, it's been announced not as a match, but as some kind of face-to-face, so we'll see what happens there. We also get Pac taking on Gravity, which is ironic because it's the man that Gravity forgot. Now facing Gravity. And yeah, basically, they tried to kind of show some similarities between them, but let's be honest, there's no comparison to Pac. And the bastard gets the job done. He defeats Gravity in pretty short work, to be fair. Next, Swerve Strickland takes on Darby Allin, and as you can see from this picture, AR Fox appears in a hoodie, so we don't know who he is at first, and he basically beats down Darby, allowing Swerve to get the win. Nick Wayne's also at ringside. He tries to help as well, but basically he's outnumbered. So AR Fox holds up an embassy shirt, so it looks like he's joining the Mogul Embassy. So interesting. Let's see how that one develops as well. Britt Baker, Ty Valkyrie face off for the very first time ever, and unfortunately the chemistry just wasn't there for this one. It can happen if you've never faced each other before and had that chance to figure each other out, and unfortunately that was the case here. Britt did get the win, but it was a shame. You know, both of these are really good, but it just didn't click. Also, backstage, Jericho gets a new painting from Don Callis. It's hanging up in the dressing room when JAS come in, say they appreciate him, but he doesn't appreciate them. Then for the main event, three-way action closes out the show. Jon Moxley and Claudio Castagnoli taking on Best Friends and taking on Lucha Bros. A lot of chaos in this one. Not much else to say, to be honest, but Moxley ends up getting preoccupied with Orange Cassidy on the ramp, who's seeking some retribution from earlier. And Trent has Claudio pinned, but he wasn't a legal man, so Lucha Bros end up pulling out the win. After the match, as I said, people fighting everywhere, and announced for Dynamite 200 we're going to get Mox versus Trent versus Penta. So alrighty then. I wouldn't particularly have booked that for Dynamite 200 if I'm honest, but yeah, not the strongest episode of Dynamite this week, unfortunately. Over on Rampage, another Battle Royal kicks off the show. This time it's a tag team Battle Royal, and Big Bill and Brian Cage end up getting the win. So they're going to be facing the winners of FTR and MJF and Adam Cole, which we will come on to momentarily. Kip Sabian returns. He takes on Commander, and I thought there's maybe a way to reintroduce him ahead of All In, but Commander ends up getting the win, so maybe not. And also the Kingdom were there. They got a win over some jobber team as well. And in terms of the main event, we took it old school for two former women's champions, Nyla Rose and Hikaru Shida. Marina Shafir does try to help Nyla at one point, but it's not enough even, as Shida gets the win. So she's going to now face Toni Storm for the women's title at Dynamite 200. And moseying on over to Collision, we kick off with some ladder match action. Buddy Matthews takes on Andrade El Idolo. Andrade's mask is hanging above the ring, and this was a banger. Let's be honest, Matthews is so sorely underrated. He's absolutely great. Every time I see him, I just think how good he is. Some brutal moments in this one as well, but none more so than the sunset flip off the ladder onto a ladder. It was painful, but Andrade basically handcuffs Matthews to the ropes, and just as he's climbing the ladder, Julia decides to jump on his back, and so Andrade climbs the ladder with Julia basically on his shoulders, and yeah, basically Andrade ends up throwing her off the ladder into Buddy, and they go through a table, and Andrade unhooks his mask, so he's got it back. So let's see, I think after this he's basically put on Twitter he wants to fight Malachi, so let's see whether that happens at All In. And a bit of a random one, Darby Allin takes on Minoru Suzuki. It was a fun match, let's be fair. Suzuki has Darby in the sleeper, but Darby reverses it and gets a pin for the win. After the match, Christian interrupts on the Titantron, says that the title has moved on from Darby and Darby's no longer fit to hold it. So he's going to send him back to Hot Topic. Haha. Next, CM Punk comes out with a big red bag in tow. Shivani asks him, what's in the bag? The bag isn't something he's been carrying around. It's been something he's been left holding. He pulls out the original AEW title to the surprise of absolutely nobody. The belt has his name on it because he earned it. No one's beaten him for it. And then Circa NWO decides to spray paint the belt with a giant X in the middle, saying he's straight edge and that means he's better than you. Little hint about MJF there as well. He says he's the real world's champ, but Starks comes out saying he's beaten twice, and so that title should belong to him. Punk says if he wants a shot, he needs to do it without cheating, without the help from the referees, and Punk says, I'll give you a shot at this title with a special referee from my past, and it's going to be Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So that's happening next week, and yeah, should be a fun match, let's be fair. We also got Samoa Joe making short work of Gravity in a match. Miro was backstage having a bit of a fight with Aaron Solo. Mercedes Martinez defeated Kiera Hogan and then takes out Chris Statlander to set up a future TBS title match. And we have a trios match with Bullet Club Gold defeating the team of Vikingo, Darius Martin and Action Andretti. But the main event, it's the tag titles on the line, FTR defending against Better Than You, Baby. And it was a really good main event, lots of back and forth. Both teams had opportunities to win it. But ultimately, MJF ends up being rolled up for the champs to retain. After the match, we're wondering who's gonna turn. Is it going to be Adam Cole? Is it going to be MJF? Cole hands the belt to MJF after staring at it for a bit, turns his back to him, realizes what he's done, puts his hands up, expecting MJF to hit him with the belt, but MJF throws it away, and the pair end up hugging in the ring. I'm surprised that they haven't done the turn. Surely it has to. Surely this has to be the main event for All In or All Out or All Shake It All About. But yeah, interesting nonetheless, but these two remain a team for now at least. So yeah, that was the Rapid Roundup. We've wrapped up and rounded up everything in under 60 minutes. So let us know in the comments what you think of the shows this week, and we will catch you on the next one.